Okay, we'll call this meeting of the Lift Board to order. It's Thursday, August 9th, 2018 at 6:33. And we will start with the roll call. Carol Rizyak.
Here.
Cindy Christensen.
Here.
Jason will be not attending tonight. William Hopping. Here. Joseph Areno. Here. Jack Reinchecke. Here. And Kevin Seiler is here. Also with us is Stephen Kemp. He's out of the room right now making some copies for us. We would also like to welcome our neighbors who have joined us in person and online. We have the agenda in front of us. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second? All in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Motion passes. The minutes for the last meeting of July 12th. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes as presented?
So moved.
Second? Second. Any comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. So this is the opportunity for public comment for members neighbors who have joined us to come forward and make a comment. As always, we ask that you state your name prior to making any comments, and feel free to fill up the whole 3 minutes that are allotted to you. Anybody wish to come forward? Okay.
It'll be the whole 3 minutes. I wanted to talk to you today, as soon as I start myself on here, about some of the things that exist in the Columbine Square and urban renewal area and what those properties are. And so I wanted to start off with the condition survey that Ricker Cunningham did. And what they did, and this is a copy of the condition survey, is they identified 22 properties that they wanted to look at, and they had the AIN, which is the county's number to cross-reference the property, the address, and the number of acreages. And then they had 11 conditions to actually go through to identify blight in that urban renewal area. So this is the condition survey. It starts from 0 to 21. And so I came up with this spreadsheet that has all of the Columbine Square urban renewal area, and the yellow means that has been previously excluded. The green means that there's a substantial modification approved on 217. So I'll kind of talk through those properties as we get through them, because I'm going to show you a map of the properties in the Columbine Square urban renewal areas. And I know these numbers are hard to read, and this is hard to read. It comes directly from the condition survey. On page 47, let's see here. So this is what the Columbine Urban Renewal Square area is. So if we go to that slice of pizza on the left-hand side there, we can start with property 13 on the bottom there. Property 13 is the Gas Express. Number 5 is the Lomar Mart, which is also a gas station. Number 12 is a mall, which also includes Walter's Pizza. And number 0 is a automobile repair shop and also a ballet studio. So then if we look all the way on the right-hand side, you'll see number 18, which is 18, 14, and 15. 18 is the Home Depot, and 14 is the Postal Workers Credit Union, and 15 is a spa. And those properties on the right-hand side have been excluded from the urban renewal area. So now we get to property number 10, which is on top here. That property number 10 on the top right-hand side, that is the existing U.S. Bank, which is the only property in the urban renewal area that has an address outside of this state of Colorado. It's owned by a company out of Minneapolis. So then if we go look down and to your left, that is the Columbine Urban Renewal Area. And that is, I wish I had a pointer, that's the Columbine Square Urban Renewal Area. And then if we look at number 4, that is the plant store. That is, and number 6 is Arapahoe County. And what I wanted to mention with Arapahoe County is that you don't get any increment from Arapahoe County for their property that is in the urban renewal area. And number 16 is the Group Voyagers, which is no longer part of the urban renewal area. 17, 7, and 8 are, 17 is shopping center, 7 is a who knows what, and 8 is a car wash that has been recently updated. So 17 is with the Toad Tavern. I'm sorry. Yeah, 17 is with the Toad Tavern and also a liquor store and laundromat in addition to other availability there. So this is what your urban renewal area is, and if you have...
Your 3 minutes is up.
Oh, okay, if you have any other questions, just let me know.
Okay.
May I ask her a question? Linda, on that map, what's the difference between the gray and the orange?
This is from the condition survey, so it's one of the 11 conditions that these areas do not actually meet. And that condition, I'd have to go back and...
Okay, so it's based on the condition rather than in the area or out of the area.
Right, it's rather than in or out of the area. It's the condition of the property, and it's one of the 11 conditions. And which one that is, I don't know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any others wish to come forward? Okay, we will close this period for public comment. Financial report is attached. Tiffany was unable to join us tonight. She did send me an email to state that the only additional financial transactions since June are interest earnings of $569.44 and net property tax revenues of $1,366. So do we have a motion to accept the financial report as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
I'm loath to approve something when the author is not here and we can't ask questions.
I'm not too happy. We cannot approve it and wait till the next session when she's here and you may ask any specific questions you may have.
So if you're going to vote, I will vote against it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Did you have an opportunity, or maybe Mr. Kemp might be able to answer, I'm wondering if the checks returning increment have been cut?
They have not. Matter of fact, she just started the process. We're starting it, hopefully tomorrow we'll do it. She just sent me an email tonight also, what I have to do to move funds. But it's in the process, because I did call her earlier this week about that, because I knew we needed to close that. And she was finally to get to, like I said, I got an email this evening, and we'll start on that tomorrow. Hopefully we can get all that done.
Thank you.
Okay. Committee reports. Nothing there, so we go right to unfinished business, which are kind of committee reports also. So we'll start with the website update.
Okay. I met with Eric last week, so he is starting the process. And he has come up with a couple of photos that he's sticking to for the welcome page, and they're basically just generic photos of Littleton, and there's one that's a large shot that shows a lot of the area. So that's probably what we're going to go with, but he was going to pull some more out, so he was going to email those to me. And then I would say that we went over the rest of it, and the board page has all the board members' names, and what we did was we put Kevin first as the chair, and then Carol as the vice chair, and then the other members by alphabetical order. They were all kind of messed up before. So, and I double checked to make sure that all of the dates were correct, so that, yes, so that all of the dates should be correct. So those of you who asked me if your dates were going to be correct for when you're finished, I did double check that. And I did get bios from everyone except...
I have it, I
was hoping you would be one volunteer.
No, I have it, I failed to send it to you this week.
Okay. The project page will have the one page about the project, the Columbine Square project, and then there will be a click where you can click and you get to the entire plan, so that we have all of that, so that you're not scrolling forever, but if you do want to see it, it's right there and you can get to it. Okay, then next comes the contact page, and we had talked about the contact page at our subcommittee, and I'm not sure we ever came up with something, but I think that what we had decided was we were going to have the contact go to Evan as the chair's email, and that you would come up with, let the board know what came through and what's happening on there. So that is exactly the way that is set up. And then meetings will have, it's set up just like the city council is, so it's got kind of the grid that you can look at, so that, and then we will put in the current years, which are already put in, and they'll be in order of, the latest meeting to the first meeting. And then what will happen after that is Eric is putting a number right underneath that. It will say for 2017, and then you'll click and you'll get 2017. And we'll go back a few years, and then for the archived, what we'll call the archived ones, there will be a way that you can actually get to those. Eric is looking at putting a search on there so that you could actually search if you know when the date is, or you can search all of the 215s or 2011 or whatever you want to take a look at. And then that way it'll be easy. You don't have to scroll to find it. You can actually just do a search for it. And then we'll have a click to categories. And then that will be where the repealed plans are. And if we have anything else, I'm trying to think if there was something else that we needed to do where people would want to go back and look at some of the archived things. And I think there'll also be a click to the state law that is for Urban Renewal Authority. I think when we talked before, when the subcommittee talked, we didn't want to do a lot of clicks like to different organizations that would take you out of the website, because then you might not come back and you might not be able to find what you were looking for. So I think that that's the way that we decided to come up with that. So like I said, Eric's working on, he's got the board page done, he's got the contact page done, he's working on the front page, and he's also working on the other pages that we talked about. So.
Okay. So a couple of things. None of these pages have gone live yet, correct? No. Okay. So is it still the goal to have Eric come in, show us a draft of what they're going to look like for the whole board to say yes or no, or talk about modifications?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good. And you have something?
Just because I'm writing, and I want to go back. You made a comment about the archives that Eric's doing a way to get, and I need it for my notes. What is he working on for the archives?
For the archives, he's just working on a way to click.
To get to individual years?
So, start with individual years, and then you can go back. So if you want March, you'll be able to click, and then you can do a search so that you can go back and put in exactly what you're looking for.
So, this is, I think, Carol, you've been forwarding me the final minutes.
Correct.
So that we didn't have them saying draft on them anymore.
Right.
Have you been setting up, were you
I
looking
sent
for me
it
to forward?
you
Okay.
Because what I understood is that Wendy wanted everything to come through.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay. So for the last 2 years that you've been, or a year and a half, year, 9 months, 8 months, whatever it's been, how far are you along on converting those where they don't say draft anymore? Do I have them all now? I think it was only just a few.
I don't know, and I
Okay.
suppose maybe I could get with Wendy and find, or go to the city's website and see what they have.
Okay.
Probably just need to make a little grid, a checklist and say, yes, we've done it, no, we haven't.
Gotcha. 'Cause I think you only sent me like 3 or 4.
Yeah, and there were a period of time we didn't meet very much, so it's not like.
There's probably about a dozen
Yeah.
total for the last year and a half, because we didn't meet,
Maybe.
last summer and fall was,
Right. So I can do a little looking on that.
we just want to make sure we get that when we go live.
Yeah, we do have the meetings and minutes page.
Yeah.
Correct, but some of what we had,
Yeah.
I don't think,
Still have
draft
all
on
over
it,
it.
right.
Right.
And we wanted to say that those are the official ones.
Yeah, do you want me to continue to email those to you?
You might just send them both to me and Cindy. I mean, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Cindy's going to be channeling that to
Eric.
Eric to
Okay.
get them on the site.
Okay, and maybe this is a good time to talk about the draft minutes. I like the idea of putting draft minutes up. We'll meet once a month, and that's a long time in between meetings. And if we had the draft minutes up, it's got draft written on it, people know it's a draft and it's subject to being amended in any way. But I would like to, once they get done, in fact, it might motivate me to get it done earlier, to get them up on the page, and then once they're approved, we go in and switch them out with the ones that have been actually approved.
I don't see it. Does anybody have an issue with that? Okay. Well, we can discuss that when we look to finalize the website and what it's going to look like and how.
Yeah, so maybe when you talk to Eric about building that page, he may want, you might let him know that we're talking about doing draft minute and approved minutes, and maybe it's just as easy to switch them out. I don't know.
Okay, I'll check with him, because we've got that one page, it's just like the cities where it's a grid, and then it'll be live so that you can click on the minutes from the meeting. So, yeah, so we just need to figure out.
Okay, all right.
And I assume he's also setting up for the videos, recorded videos also, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions for Cindy or comments or questions? Okay, so we'll go next to the update on the attorney RFP.
The ads were running, both the classifieds and the C-Brief, which is the digital newsletter for the Bar Association. We've had 4 firms request the RFP, so I would expect that we have 2 to 3 for interview, just based off of what I've seen. Obviously, nothing has come in, and that's just guessing. So my only question is going to be when it comes time to interview. I think we discussed scheduling a special meeting for that rather than using our normal time. Is that correct?
Correct. And that would be in a study session or a formal meeting?
I would recommend that you do it in a study session, or because this board is a separate political subdivision, you'd be subject to the Colorado Open Meetings Act, and that would be the way to do it. Would be to do it in an executive session per the Colorado Open Meetings Act.
Okay. Okay.
If I recall, the group here preferred not to do executive session for the interviews. Is that correct?
I think so.
Okay.
And when are they due in?
They're due September 4th, and then the plan is to award the contract at the beginning of October, so we'll have 30 days to interview and make a decision. So I don't know if it would be possible to squeeze the meeting in at the beginning of the month to do the interviews and then have the next meeting to discuss. or possibly we move the regular meeting to later in the month and use the time that we have at the beginning of the month to do the interviews.
Well, we meet the following week. It'll be our regular session. We can report in what we have. I mean, we may not get any, and then there's a different discussion, right? Or we may have one, and then we decide whether that's sufficient or we want to try again. So I think we kind of just wait to see what comes out, and then make a decision then how we're going to move forward.
Great. Yeah, that sounds good. So we'll report back in September with what we have, and Jason and I will have gone over any received proposals by then and be able to recommend certain candidates for interview. One comment I did hear from one firm that has a lot of experience in this area. They declined to do a proposal just because everybody is so busy right now with development. So I think it was probably good to start the process early just because it's hard to find people in this area.
Yeah. Carol.
Joe, you and Jason were going to kind of come up with some kind of matrix that would help you evaluate. Are you working on that?
Jason had brought up that idea, but thought that it would be unnecessary, say if we only got 2 or 3 applicants and they either met the minimum requirements or didn't. We probably want to give you all of that. Save everything.
Any other questions? Discussion? Okay. So next we'll go to the application documents committee report, and we'll turn it over to Jack. I think he has a little presentation for us.
Yes, I like to talk PowerPoints. However, Carol and Joe were on the committee. We had 2 study sessions. And I know we're tasked with looking at application documents. But as we sat in the first study session, we're going, okay, so we asked for documents. What are we going to do with them? Thought it might be a better idea to at least have a discussion here about what our process is so that we know what to ask for and when to ask for it. So we don't ask for a whole bunch of documents up front that we don't need if we're going to say no. We just need the stuff that's going to be necessary to say yes either to a whatever proposal the developer has, whether it's within Columbine Square or whether it's a new area that want to start a urban renewal plan. And so basically when you look at it, if you look at this, it looks like a spider web, doesn't it? Yes. But anything on the green side is mostly for the city, and everything on the red side is probably stuff that LIFT gets involved in. And I'm sure Mr. Kemp, you'll help us out, make sure that we get this thing straightened out. There is no pride of authorship, in case you want to know. It's just, we had to get something out for discussion purposes, and that's it. And so we're going to go through each of these little stops on the way and talk about what we think is going to happen, and then there's some parts in here, or there's sub-bullets that say this is the information we need. So we start with the developer application. Well, the developer doesn't need us. They can go straight through the P4 city process, whatever, the planning commission, city council, go to straight construction. Don't need us now. But if anyone wants some public participation, then they got to come see us. And there's going to be a preliminary review. And what do we ask for? Well, let's go to the next slide. Our application, we want some developer info. And if you look in the packet that we were given when we had our first meeting in February, there are application documents in there, kind of stating what we need. They're not fleshed out very well, but this is the kind of information based on, at least my experience in banking. You want governing documents, financial disclosures, business history references, and you want to kind of know what the project is about. And you want a preliminary sources and uses of funds, that is, private sources, whether it's a loan or equity, and then public source and what our share is supposed to be. And then obviously we need an application fee to cover our costs through a certain portion of the review. Okay, And so we get this stuff, and what do we do with it? In the past, LIFT, or Urban Renewal, had a executive director that could probably oversee this process. But we're 7 members on a board, and we're supposed to review whatever process happens. So, is it at this point we retain a part-time manager to shepherd this thing through our process? We need an assessment of the applicant as a responsible party. That kind of skill demands an underwriter, that is, a banking underwriter, or, somebody that can look at somebody's financial statements and say, yeah, this guy's got some money behind him. Constructability, is the project feasible at all? And there we need probably an AE firm kind of skill set to take a look at it. And a financial feasibility, once again, we're looking at these kinds of skills. You got to be an economist, kind of an appraiser, kind of an underwriter, kind of a cost estimator. It'd be nice if you could wrap one person into that, but it's just kind of looks like we're going to have somebody that can kind of assemble the skill set that's going to be necessary. And then we already have an impact report, and I just threw this in here simply because, well, is it going to be Columbine Square? If it's something else, we have to not update the impact report. We'll have to do a new one. And then, of course, we want to, during our review process, we want to support any P4 process, particularly if we like this project, with, a strong showing of support at the Planning Commission and City Council meetings. The taxing entity review is resolution number 88, because it's pretty clear the City Council says that anything that we do that involves certain items has to enjoy the full support and approval of our partner taxing entities. So we give them in the case of Columbine Square, an updated impact report in case the project we're doing impacts it. It has to be prepared by consultants, obviously. We'll present it. Comments. If there are comments back in order to get certain kinds of support, for example, if you look at the resolution we have on file from Littleton School District 6, it states categorically that any increase in the mill levy due to bond issues they issue are not part of the tax incremental financing. So we would have to take all that into account. And if we have to go back and change some things and get comments, we're going to have to consult with the applicant, we think. And the applicant can decide whether they want our continued participation or not. And then we do our adjustments, we have to revise the plans. And at that time, we're thinking that we should ask for another payment from the developer to reimburse any costs we have that actually goes through City Council review at that point. So if the City Council approves it, we've got some additional costs to get there. And at this point, we should probably procure additional services, or at least get these lined up. Bond counsel, the bond underwriter, trustee, rating agency. All 4 of these entities have a role in tax-free municipal finance. Well, the Planning Commission, that's the agreed side. We don't, as I just put this in 2 hearings, proposal fits within city plans. And if it's approved, it goes to City Council. If it's not, the applicant must decide whether to abandon it or modify it. Same thing with City Council, 2 hearings, final authority for construction approval. If City Council approves it, and LIFT is supposed to provide some kind of public support, then the question has to go before the voters. And that's when we say the applicant pays additional fee to cover the cost of the election. And we're in the business of the election business then. And the applicant, since they're paying the freight and us probably have to decide whether we want a city or a county election. And if the voters approve, the project continues with our participation. If it doesn't, we're out of the picture. Which means we probably are going to have some kind of process where we're going to go out and campaign. If it's approved, then we'll authorize the bond council, the underwriter, and the trustee to proceed. We're probably looking at tax-free municipal debt. Costs include construction improvements, opinions, underwriting, administration, rating, and brokerage. Our application documents tell the applicant that they get some of their administration feedback in this bond underwriting and bond proceeds. And simply because Littleton Urban Renewal defaulted on bonds, even though it was long ago, the investment community doesn't forget that. So we might be forced, in order to sell them, to have an insurance enhancement on it, which is expensive too. And then we issue the debt. So the project gets instructed. Our trustee distributes the bond proceeds as part of the agreements. Premises are completed, occupied. We start collecting our incremental taxes, and we distribute the tax proceeds to the trustee for payment to the bondholders, and we distribute tax proceeds to partners as agreed. Very nice. We get to the bottom end, everybody's happy. 20 years later, everybody's paid off. We got a beautiful project. Really helped Littleton out. But here are our potential obstacles. Our government partners. Any one of these top 5 are involved currently in the Columbine Square. We're not sure if South Metro gets in the picture, if they're going to be somebody that we have to go to and get their approval, even if we don't change our plan. And then, of course, we've got RTD, which I don't think is collecting ad valorem taxes right now, and Valley Sanitation and City Downs. We don't know if they've got a taxing entities around that area, but there's always these small little metro districts that we better make sure that we have approval from. And then we have statutory requirements, because the P4 process is, the project could just get railroaded by planning commission, and even though we like it, doesn't matter. Resolution 88, we don't keep these people happy. And the election, the voters disapprove it. Well, that's basically the spider web. And I'm looking forward to any further discussion that we may have tonight or later to try to get this spider web so we have it in the right order and with the right entities involved, so that we truly understand what our process is, so when a developer does give us an application, we have documents that truly fit the situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack and committee. That looks like a very thorough presentation. Are there any comments or questions? Steve?
One suggestion I would probably make is, both with the planning commission and with the council, I don't think this entity as a governmental entity can really tell them how many hearings they're going to have. I would just simply say action before, because I think it's it's both inappropriate and legally, you can't really say to the city council, you're going to do 2 public hearings. That may be what they should do, but that's not a decision NIFT can make for the council.
And I appreciate that, simply because that was the number I was bandied about. And I just wanted to show that there were a number of public hearings that were possible that the thing could get
So I would say
sidetracked.
it's like action or public hearing before the council, and that's something that governmental body gets the ability to make the decision how many. Maybe 1, could be 5.
See, one of the things that we talk about, and that P4 process is a fairly new process. We thought anybody who came to apply should be informed about that P4 process because it would give them an early indication what they might encounter at the Planning Commission and the City Council level. Now, if you think that we should ignore that P4 process in our own, then help us work through that. We're trying to come up with the best possible scenario for somebody in order to succeed. So, and find out where the roadblocks are before they've spent $1 million.
And most likely, because the P4 process is only limited to those zonings that are planned development zonings. Right now, the P4 process can't be used for anything but a PD district zoning. My expectation is that the P4 will occur long before they file an application for urban renewal funding. That would occur because from a standpoint of filing, by the time you file an application for urban renewal funding, you're going to be well into the project, and I can't imagine a developer coming in and filing an application for urban renewal without already having a pending planning application. And so they will have been well down the road. So I mean, obviously the P4, if a developer uses it, and it's optional, they would be doing that literally at the very beginning before they've even filed an application.
Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I would like to understand, if I'm a developer and you've got two directions to go. You come to LIFT or you go through the regular process, through the Planning Commission, City Council, because you're not interested in using increment. But maybe they don't even know at the point. So if you want to make a linear chart of how it works, so somebody comes in, expresses an interest to community development. Community development says, yeah, here's what you can do. You can go to LIFT, or you can go this direction, or we've got the P4. How do we explain to the developer the options that are there for them? And can they switch their mind through the process before they ever get to that formal application? Does the formal application come before it comes to LIFT or after it comes to LIFT?
I mean, I would tell you in my experience, the formal application for a zoning case will happen before anything comes to LIFT. Normally what would happen is if I'm a developer and I have a PD parcel, I'm going to come into community development and say, I'm thinking about some things, and I understand you have this P4 process. I would like to take some concepts before I even complete an application or anything to council and just get their reaction. And so there's no land use applications or anything, there's just this P4. You go in, you maybe go to both the planning commission, council, you get their reaction, council goes, yeah, we like this. This seems to meet a lot of our needs. And at that point, the developer would then come back and do what they need to do to submit a formal land use application. Now, if I'm a developer, I am not going to expend the money to look at the development financing until I've got the application in and started that process. Because at that point, I'm going to make an evaluation. Do I want to use standard commercial lending? Do I have like a real estate investment trust or some kind of private financing? Or to make this project work, do I have to have a public participation? And because you're going to really need to know, okay, what's the confines of this project? Let's just take Columbine. Am I going to do a redesign and reconstruction of Bellevue, where perhaps we install medians, enhance landscaping, and that kind of thing? Now that generally is something that's a general public benefit. If I'm a developer, I may begin to say, well, wait, my project can't bear all of this cost. I need to think about urban renewal application, tax increment financing, so I can spread that cost, because a commercial lender isn't going to let me put all that cost on the property. On the other hand, you may have a developer who looks at the project and says, I'm gonna do my land use project. I really am not interested in doing anything more than what the city mandates in terms of improvements along Bellevue, and that's it. And so that's gonna really get decided as they come in with the zoning application, because that's where, as a developer, I'm going to have given some serious thought to what I'm proposing in terms of a project and those kinds of things. Because when that land use application comes in, not only, we always think of this in terms of a community development department review. It really doesn't happen that way. There's a planning review, there's a public works review, we review it for utilities. We may say, okay, you're doing a project at Columbine Square, we have decided that we need an additional sewer line to service this area because this is going to overly increase demand. So now we're going to be talking to the developer about, okay, you may have to construct, say, 2 miles of sewer line, which a rough guess would be maybe $500,000 to $750,000. Okay, now as a developer, I've got to cost that into my project and say, can I make the numbers work? And so all those things happen after that zoning application gets filed. And that's when, as a developer, I'm going to begin to think, do I need to come in and do an urban renewal project, or can I make the financing go on this project outside of that?
Mr. Kemp?
And I know that's a long answer to your
No,
question.
it's great, because it helps with me with the understanding the timing. Question, what if a developer comes into us and asks us for us to use our condemnation powers? When would that occur?
Normally, that is not going to occur until after they filed a land use application. And normally what will happen is, as we review that land use application, I'm going to use a project in another city that I was involved with. The developer decided to build a major resort, and we wanted a public roadway into the resort. The developer was required to construct the entire public roadway from a major street into the resort. However, there was a parcel of land between the resort parcel and the public street, whereupon they asked the city to condemn that parcel of land. We did not make any agreements or anything until we got all the way through the zoning process, and then we did a development agreement with the owner. And that would be the process I would anticipate doing here. We're not, if you came in today and said, oh, I want to develop and I need you to condemn, I'm going to sit there and go, really? It's not, we don't have anything to talk about right now. When you come in, you get your zoning case filed, we start doing all the engineering, public works, utility analysis, then we'll talk about whether that kind of action is necessary.
Okay.
When a project would come through urban renewal, do they pay the same impact fees that any other project would if they were not using urban renewal?
Yes, impact fees are assessed based on the various categories we have for the fees, and then based on whether it's a commercial or residential, the fee amounts. And they would pay those fees.
When you really think about the financial burden just of using, you've got to pay impact fees no matter what. But then you come into urban renewal, there's another pretty steep financing mechanism that goes into place before they even get access to the money.
Well, and I think that's the issue with any commercial project is depending on what you're looking at, you just have to basically do the economic analysis of whether you can make it pencil out. If you look at right now the retail market, it's very, very difficult to make retail projects pencil out. And so if I'm a developer and I have a huge amount of costs I've got to put into that project, and it's a retail project, there's a point where a lender's just going to say, this doesn't work. It doesn't pencil out.
So, Jack, can you pull up your spider web?
Be happy to.
So if I'm Hearing you correctly, Steve. What we should be concerned about is everything on the red side.
Yes.
And that those dotted lines that Jack has put in there aren't necessarily relevant to the discussions we'll be having and have to deal with.
That's correct. You're going to be concerned once they file that application. The common term that we use is you're a conduit financing entity. You're an extra source of financing that a party can come to. You're going to be concerned with the things on the LIFT application, because the issue for you is if this project were to issue debt and the project cannot support the debt and the debt goes into default, then the issue becomes if the project doesn't have adequate, what we call credit enhancement, another basically guarantees to pay that debt becomes a default of the Urban Renewal Authority. So from your standpoint, the red stuff is what is critical, because this board is going to be looking at, does this project pencil out? And if the project has mixed sources of financing, we're going to be looking at, does all of it pencil out? From the city council standpoint, it looks at whether it pencils out, but it looks at it from a much different perspective because it has a whole separate land use component.
Well, the city itself will get another review as a taxing authority.
Oh, yes. And I would tell you, I mean, we are always, one of the things the city is always concerned with is we use a term called overlapping debt. The school district issues debt. We issue debt. County issues debt. Fire district issues debt. Sanitary, metro districts. Well, at some point, all these different taxing entities issue debt and it all overlaps. Well, even though we don't have any responsibility as a city for a metro district, it's not our problem. If a metro district in the city defaults, that begins to raise questions in the financial community. Well, if that district defaulted, what's the creditworthiness of everybody else? So even though, LIFT's a perfect example, yes, your debt stands alone, we're not responsible for it, but that doesn't mean that we don't look at it closely, because it can have impacts on us in terms of things that we need and what we may ask the public to let us do.
So that's why that skill set of an economist and an underwriter and an appraiser, that individual needs a very good crystal ball. And if you take a look at the plan that we had, Urban Renewal had done for the Columbine Square area in 2015, it needs an update because things changed pretty radically because the economy got better, so a lot of the taxing went better. But you know, once you make a plan to try to forecast anything beyond a year is really, really difficult. If the thing will carry itself for a year, we're probably okay, but just never know. But I appreciate you bringing all this stuff up because I want to get the timing correct in this. And the appropriate time that the developer would give us an application, would that be somewhere between Planning Commission and City Council or after City Council?
Well, yes, I moved the P4 process ahead of the developer application because it always happens ahead of the developer application because it's a non-quasi-judicial process. And the developer application always happens afterwards.
Okay. Now, as far as running the election, is that going to be the responsibility of LIFT to shepherd that along, or is the city going to support that in some way?
I think that's a kind of an interesting question. And the reason I say it's an interesting question is because by virtue of the 2013 charter amendments, there are some provisions in the charter that says that the cities to participate an urban renewal, it must have the approval of the voters. So that would be a city election, not an urban renewal authority election. The Urban Renewal Authority doesn't have a charter, it's totally governed by state statute. So the only elections this authority is entitled and can hold is only that authorized by state statute. The authority has no independent authority and it cannot enact things contrary to state statute. So it's a city election.
So the election should be in the green side.
Yes, I mean, essentially, if you're going to adopt, it's going to be kind of a red to the green. You're going to adopt a plan that envisions the city having to take actions that require an election. So
I should have the election diamond blue then.
Yeah, it's going to be kind of a combination, maybe red and green stripes or whatever. It's going to be a city election because it's by virtue of provisions in our charter. It's not by virtue of any provisions in the state urban renewal law.
Okay, so we will, there's no choice for a county to use the county election.
The county, no, I'm not aware of any reason why the county would have to have an election at all. It would just be a city election and by virtue of the charter provisions.
Well, hopefully next month I will have this thing striped properly.
And by all means, if you want to set up a time to sit down with me, I'm happy to sit down with you and sort of say, okay, this is what...
That's what I need.
City lawyer perspective, this is what I think, how it probably would fit best.
So Resolution 88, that's a city council resolution? So it requires that all the taxing entities involved have to sign off on whatever we would do if we move forward with something.
Yeah, and then there's some other, it has stipulations in there if it involves financing, condemnation, a couple of other things in there, and I can't remember, I didn't bring it up here with me. Yeah, and it's for every taxing entity. And right now, currently for Columbine Square, we have those letters from each of from the Arapahoe County and the school district and urban drainage. But I don't know if South Metro gets a piece of the action now. Do we have to take it to them?
I need to go back and take a look at that resolution. I want to take a look at that resolution and see exactly what it says. And so that's something I need to do.
Because it talks about the plan, it doesn't talk about a project.
And the issue there is obviously that was done some time ago, and I want to look at it both in terms of the charter amendments that the voters initiated, as well as there's been a number of urban renewal cases that have come out of the courts. So I need to take a little bit of a look at that.
Well, we don't want to, if we get an application from somebody, we don't, through our own mechanism, want to make this not work.
No, that's why I want to make sure that I'm comfortable how that now fits in terms of where things are in 2018.
So another question is, my understanding that prior to me joining the board, and when we had 4 urban renewal projects, there was a executive or manager for the board that was, and that was a contracted position.
Yes.
Okay. So another thing I think we may want to start thinking about, I mean, we're looking forward that if something were to come up, having a lawyer on board to help us through this process legally as we do this. Is that, maybe we should start thinking about, do we start looking at if something comes up, so we have somebody on board that would handle the day-to-day, even on it's a part-time basis, because that was a part-time position, they weren't a full-time employee of Lyft, as I understand it, then
Part-time.
Yeah, so that we have somebody on board that if something does come up, we're able to have that person help us with the day-to-day management of this process, whatever process we come up.
Right. Yeah.
You can certainly do that. I've seen boards, sometimes they'll contract with a firm to provide those services during the pendency of a project. I think that if you get an application in, you could have a variety of different ways you may want to approach that.
I think that'd be a good idea, to at least have somebody perhaps on retainer, you know?
Right.
And then we start paying them when we actually get something.
I think that would be real important in our interviewing of attorneys, law firms, that they have that kind of experience, because I would prefer that we do start out something like that, where we have a relationship with an attorney, and then if we get to the point where we really look like we're going to be going down this road, then take some advice from the attorney that perhaps if he feels like he needs somebody else to come in to manage more of the detail day-to-day, then we search for that help.
And they would probably know of someone, if we need to do that, because of what they do, they would probably know who's out there that could do that. And it would be easier than us just trying to find somebody.
Right.
See, I'm not sure if an attorney has the skills. I mean, I'm thinking more like a AE firm or a economic analysis firm, because what we need at that point is not somebody with legal advice looking it over. We need somebody that's more used to dealing with the entities that we're going to be dealing with, which are architects, engineers, maybe the appraiser, maybe the economic consultants for the developer, just to coordinate with them.
You might want to sort of think about all of this in terms of a bit of a linear process. You're dealing right now with a request for proposals from legal counsel. We're dealing with the application. Once those processes are completed, then it might make sense to say, okay, the third piece of this process is let's look at an economic analysis firm and let's sort of look at getting somebody that we have designated for that. But you sort of break this up. Sometimes this can become so huge that it becomes hard to manage. And you just sort of say, okay, we got one process, we're just going to take steps towards this.
But economic analysis firms vary in their expertise, so
Yes.
It depends on what would be planned there in terms of physical assets. If it's, all retail, which it wouldn't be, you'd want one kind of firm. If it's multifamily, a different kind. If it's lodging, you'd want another kind. And the manager, I think Denver has a woman dedicated, and that's what she does. I mean, she's an administrator, and that's what the individual who did this for the board before is he is an economic development administrator who has a specialty or an expertise in urban renewal. So it's different from an attorney.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't see the attorney taking on the role that Tracy Baker or Huggins does.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But I would like to have some legal advice that shepherds us in the right direction so that we know that we're taking the right step at the right time, and that we don't bungle something because we didn't know any better.
Right, and that actually crosses several of the disciplines because I think Jack's absolutely right. Your economic analysis has to be done by somebody who knows what they're doing, and you make a comment about, it's always, if you get the first year right, you've done a good job, and that's what I do in my real life, and we have people say, how accurate are you? And say, well, first year we're pretty good, but as you get further out, the variables become more specific, and it has nothing to do with urban renewal. It's just the nature of economic forecasting. So you do have to make sure that's a very important thing to get done by somebody who knows what they're doing. Probably more than anything else, I would venture to say.
Yeah, well, at least somebody that knows how to do it.
Yeah.
And has done it for a number of years, and is humble enough to know that they make mistakes.
Sure.
And so they try to minimize that in their processes.
Any other questions or comments?
So what's your expectation if we could come in next month?
For me, it would be start fleshing out what the application process would look like and what would be part of that. Before that, we talked a little bit, maybe different steps and information at different steps. Maybe bring back to us, other urban renewal areas of the same size and complexity that we would have, what their practices have been. I think you mentioned last time.
Arvada.
Arvada,
yeah.
Wheat Ridge, you could look at, and they would both be, I think, more similar to Littleton than a large city like Aurora.
Or Denver.
Or Denver.
Yeah. So, I'm always one, if I can find what I need and not have to reinvent the wheel, and just modify it for what our purposes are, it saves a lot of time and energy, and, those people have done it and made the mistakes, and we can try to avoid those.
That's a good example. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the riverfront thing that's been bandied about, they did a lousy study. That was poor economic analysis, because where have you ever seen 5-pound grapefruit sell well? And that's what they put in there, was that super grocery store with these huge, it was a almost circus-like. It was entertainment to go through there. I know you were here at the time, Carol, and I was too, and it was very poorly thought out. That was an expensive building, very specialized shopping center, grocery store that was a leading edge concept, and the edge was of the cliff. And that's one thing that I would think if we approach the opportunity, that you don't want to be on the cutting edge of something that's an unproven concept. You want something that has a high probability of success, not something that's a home run if it happens to work. It's okay if it's going to be a home run, nothing wrong with that, but you want to make sure that it's a high probability case.
So, since you two were here at the time, if you can recall, did what happened in the city council at that time and sign off on this project and say, yes, this is what we're zoning this for? Do you recall, or were part of the process?
They had a project. They determined that this area was blighted, and they did their study, and they came forward with a complete project. There was supposed to be a hotel over there, some residential, some kind of mixed-use commercial retail. And when the urban renewal plan for Riverfront was approved, that project was well-defined within the plan. And you're right. They went for a second opinion, but by the time they got the second opinion, it was too late. And the second opinion said, don't do it. It won't work for your area. But the Urban Renewal Authority had gone out to California, and there was one of those festival centers out there. And before the stores opened, they're lined up, ready to go in and shop. But what they didn't relate is the people that were lined up to shop were the cooks and the maids for the wealthy people that were coming in to shop, to go home. Well, we don't have that kind of community.
Right.
But I remember in that day they were talking about if we build it, they will come. And they did. We could go over there and marvel at all the produce, but
It was looky-loos.
we never shopped. I couldn't afford it.
It was looky-loos.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was done very differently than the way this plan was created. And it went, after 4 years, I think it went dark.
I know, the numbers on the building that's still there, 1984. It was Orwellian in more way than one.
So do we know what next steps you'll take then?
Well, I guess we'll try to do some research and see what we can gather from neighboring communities and meet with Mr. Kemp, see if we can get this process lined out so we know how this thing make the adjustments on the spider web so that, yeah, that's what it looks like, you know. So that it actually is no longer a spider web, but is a reasonable plan that we can show. If we understand it, then we can explain it to others. Right now, I'm not sure if I still understand it well enough to explain what our process is to others. We'll get there. Does that seem reasonable?
Yes.
I have done a little bit of trying to connect with other urban renewal authorities that were kind of smaller, and I've done some bigger, and I've gotten some wonderful feedback from, I believe it's the Fort Collins, which is a much bigger community. But I wouldn't want to rule out getting their documents in because they're bigger than we are. I think we can steal from them as easily as we can steal from somebody who's small. So would it be acceptable to the group?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. You know, in my job, there's things that I have to do and I'll research and then, you know, I go and I look what other higher ed is, you know, I'm in higher ed, so I look at what they're doing and you know, they're putting on an RFP for custodial services. You know, what are they doing? How are they structuring it? And I'll see something good here and see something good there, modify it and blend it together that meets my needs. I think that's the same thing. We can look at this thing and say, okay, you know, we like this, we don't like that, this is better here. I kind of see that as the same process instead of taking a blank piece of paper and say, step one, you know.
And I think that, Jack, you had mentioned at one of our previous meetings that maybe this would be something, once we get it developed, we could put it on the website. So you might let Eric know that there'd be, if like for developers or something, that click for them to take them where they need to go.
Anything else? Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Jack.
The PowerPoint was very helpful. So next is new business. Mr. Kemp approached me and asked if we wanted to have a study session so he could review with us mostly court rulings and statute changes that impact urban renewal. It may have some impact even on this process we just got done talking about and some other things. I'm kind of thinking that we could schedule that for, it would be after our next meeting. We can go into a study session directly after our normal business. And then, you know, Mr. Kemp would have time to provide us that information and we could ask questions and go on from there.
I would envision we could do this in about 30 minutes. There is a case out of the U.S. 10th Circuit Court of Appeals involving the Colorado statute in the city of Glendale that I think is worth having a very short discussion about. There's also a case out of the district court here in Jefferson County involving the city of Wheat Ridge that was not appealed, but I think it's worth noting. And there's been a couple of statutory changes, and so we can basically just address those. I don't anticipate it taking more than half an hour.
Would you have documents that you want us to
I
prepare
would
with?
prepare like a study session report like we do with the city council. I'm happy to provide copies of all the cases. Most of my governing bodies say, gee, as much as we'd love to read a 40-page 10th Circuit opinion, I'll certainly have those available. But can you skip it and give us the Reader's Digest version?
Yeah.
Summary.
And the study session will present the Reader's Digest version, but any of these will I have, and we can provide the full opinion.
So I will add that to the next, we'll have a study session right after our next meeting. Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Kemp.
Thank you.
Okay, we've reached the second time where public can comment. Again, we ask that you state your name for the record and limit any comments to your full 3 minutes. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and make some comments? Okay.
Real quick, I don't know if you guys heard, but the city council approved the Bellevue Corridor Plan, but I'm not really sure what the name is. And that might present some interesting reading because it is a vision of what may be happening in that, or what the planning commission and the council and the neighborhoods think that the vision is for that area. So, thank you.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, Linda Kaniewinski, 4th District.
Fine, thank you. Is there anyone else that's joined us tonight wish to step forward and make some comments? Okay, seeing none, close that. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
We adjourn.
Second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Kevin.